Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Teenology Podcast. I'm your host, Aiden Middleton, and I'm here with my dad, Big Boy. Because he
big
is
boy.
one big boy.
Well, I am from Panama City Beach, Redneck Riviera, Lower Alabama.
Yes, sir.
All right, Aiden, what are we talking about today on the podcast?
Today's episode is themed on navigating social media.
Well, that's important because social media is absolutely full of landmines. But before we get to that, we have to do what has become the most famous part of our podcast, the world famous Gen Z word of the episode. All right, Aiden, so the word that I got for you today, I need some help understanding, is the word low-key. Can you explain to me what low-key means?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So for me, I get made fun of a lot for liking Taylor Swift.
Okay.
Like liking her music.
Yeah.
So I get made fun of all the time, but even though I low-key like Taylor Swift, like I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but it's the truth.
But you low-key like it. You're down with T-Sweezy.
Yeah, so low-key is like you're slightly embarrassed to say it, but it's 100% true.
Sounds good. I think I'm going to start using low-key. I'm going to incorporate it into my lexicon. All right, let's get on to the episode.
All right, big boy. So today's episode is navigating social media. So can you give us a few tips to help us use it correctly?
Yeah, so social media can honestly, before I dive into what we need to do to be careful about how we use it, it can be a really great tool that we're using. In fact, here on the podcast, we use the gram.
Yeah.
At Teenology Podcast. Follow us on the gram to give information about our podcast and to communicate with you guys. And so, all social media is it's just a communication tool. It's the same as a phone. It's the same as texting people. It's just another way to communicate with the world, to hear about what's going on. And so social media is what I'll call amoral. It's not right or wrong. It's like money, right? Like money is something that it has no inherent moral value. You can use money for good things. You can use money for bad things. Social media is the exact same way. You can use it for good or you can use it for evil. And so I do have a verse that I'm going to read just a little bit of that's going to be kind of like a guiding light as we dive into some of the things that social media can be challenging in. James chapter 3, verse 6. He says, "The tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness." And then he goes on to say that the tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life.
Dang, that's a heavy verse.
It is. And he's talking about how crazy and how difficult it can be to tame our tongue and then the problems. I mean, have you ever gotten in trouble for mouthing off to your parents?
Oh, never.
No, you're perfect, right? I mean, I never
yeah.
got in trouble either as a child.
Yeah, the entire Middleton family, just a perfect family.
Yes, we're a perfect family. We have no problems. Nobody ever talks back to their parents in our house. But the tongue can get us in a lot of trouble, right? We can talk, you can talk trash, you can go cross the line and talking trash and get yourself in a lot of trouble. So first thing I want to bring up is this kind of idea of wisdom. It's this idea of use some discretion, which means be careful about what you're posting online. And the reality is a lot of discussions are better had person to person rather than keyboard to keyboard.
Why?
Well, because you can't hear tone, you can't see body language. I mean, when scientists study communication, the vast majority of the way we communicate is actually in body language and tone. And so all that gets lost on a keyboard. All of it gets lost on a computer screen. And so it's really important to have important discussions in person rather than online.
Yeah, so I also heard this story of this girl, a senior in high school in Michigan, who went to the bathroom one day and turned on the water in the faucet and realized that it was yellow. Like, it was
gross.
Disgusting yellow. And so she decided to take a picture of it and post it online. And the school found out about it and ended up suspending her for 3 days from the school for not being allowed to use her phone in the bathroom. What do you think about that?
Well, it sounds like that the school was trying to cover their butts for having some nasty water.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the principle rings true in the sense of whether the school is justified or not actually isn't the point. The point is there's consequences to what you post online.
Also to what you like or
Yep.
comment or retweet.
Exactly, because all of those things leave what people call a digital footprint, and people can go back, they can see what you've liked, they can see what you've retweeted. There's this famous movie, I think it came out in the early 2000s. Russell Crowe was in this movie called Gladiator, and there's this famous line in Gladiator, and he says, "What you do in life echoes in eternity." And you know what the reality is online world? Is what you post online echoes in eternity. And so when you guys are thinking about college, some of you guys are in senior or junior in high school and you're thinking about going to college, you're thinking about the next season of your life, you can read countless articles online of kids who got accepted to world-class institutions like Harvard that then had their acceptance taken back because the school had gone and done a little bit of research on them and found out they posted some things or liked some things on social media that the school didn't approve of, and so they rescinded their college acceptance to these schools. It's
crazy.
Exactly. And so your digital footprint is, you guys got to remember how important that is to think about before you post or like or retweet anything.
All right, big boy. How does the golden rule come into play?
Yeah, the golden rule is good really for any season of life. And the same thing is true when we are dealing with social media, is simply treat others how you want to be treated. It's easy to get in a fight online. So I know many of you guys aren't on Facebook, but you probably will be at some point in your life because I think something like a third of the planet is on Facebook.
No way.
Yes, I literally read an article just recently that, if I remember right, said there are 2.6 billion people on Facebook. So
that's insane.
It's ridiculous. Mark Zuckerberg is going to rule the world. Anyways, the point is that people love to get in fights and that kind of stuff. And we want to think, man, would Jesus talk to someone like we are talking to someone on social media? And so we got to remember that there's a real person with real hurts on the other side of the screen, and we need to be kind and gracious as we communicate on social media. As I like to say, out of the heart, the thumbs tweet.
Okay, big boy. So you talked about earlier how we need to be careful when we post online. What about what we follow or watch?
Yeah, few things are really more important than what it is that we actually put in front of our eyes. So first of all, Jesus sees what we're putting in, because what comes in is absolutely what is going to come out.
Yeah.
And also, other people can see who you follow. And so if you're following weird, shady stuff, then other people can see what you follow and will then come to conclusions about what you believe about something.
Yeah. What about friendships online? How do we handle those relationships?
Yeah, again, like we said at the very beginning, social media can be a really great tool for communication and connecting with people, but here's what my warning would be. Don't use social media as a crutch or a substitute for real friendships. You can't find ultimate friendship strictly in an online environment. There's just something about being in person, looking at somebody in the eyes, and having that heart connection with people. I know we're still living right now as we're recording this in this COVID-19 world, and so there's still some level of lockdown happening, and so it's really great to have things like social media to connect with people during this time, but it'll never be a substitute for in-person relationships with other people.
All right, big boy, I got my last question for you. How do we know if our heart is in the right place for what we're posting on social media?
Yeah, this is a question that we need to ask. This is the question I think that if Jesus was here in the 21st century, he would ask, because Jesus always went to the heart. And so I think he would just ask us, well, what is your motivation for posting? Are you trying to get attention? Because we know, man, there is this weird, like scientists would call it a dopamine hit that people get when you get likes. We want likes. We want that attention. And so are we trying to get attention? Are we maybe trying to make fun of somebody? Are we trying to be passive aggressive? Are we doing it to fill a need in our soul to be needed or loved or wanted by other people? And I think that's the thing that we've got to really protect our hearts from, that we get all of that from Jesus and not from social media.
Yeah, that is really good. I never really thought about it that way before.
And remember, guys, Jesus sees your TikToks, and apparently recently we found out so does the Chinese government.
Wow. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. That was really helpful. You guys know how we do things. We keep it no cap on the Teenology Podcast. If you guys missed the other episodes, make sure you go back and listen. And remember, tell your friends about our podcast. And follow us on Instagram at Teenology Podcast and send in your questions and topics you want to hear about. Don't forget, the Teenology Podcast is where teens make sense of the world that they are about to change. Adios.